Locked Up, The Wrongful Conviction Files, Episode 9, The Final Appeal. Welcome to the final episode of Locked Up, The Wrongful Conviction Files. I'm Roger Warstone. For 8 episodes, we followed a single devastating truth: the client was innocent. We exposed the flaws in the evidence, the inconsistencies in the witness testimonies, and the systematic biases that put an innocent man behind bars. But now the story moves beyond my investigation. My job is done. The fight for justice is now in the hands of a dedicated legal team, and their journey is about to take them to the highest courts. First, the Pennsylvania Superior Court. This is the first appellate court to hear most criminal appeals. It's an intermediate appellate court with a panel of 3 judges who review the case's record from the trial court. They do not hear the evidence or testimony. Their job is to determine if there were significant legal errors during the trial that warrant a reversal of the conviction or sentences. This could include issues like improper jury instructions, illegal evidence, or ineffective assistance of counsel. Then, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, this is the highest court in the state. Unlike the Superior Court, it doesn't have to hear every appeal. You must file a petition for allowance of appeal, and the court will only grant if it is believes the cases raise a significant legal question or if the Superior Court made a serious error. Most appeals end here as the Pennsylvania Supreme Court accepts very few cases. Finally, the United States Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court is the final court of the appeals and the highest court in the country. It would only hear a case if it involves an issue of federal law or violation of the U.S. Constitution. Much like Pennsylvania Supreme Court, it is not required to hear a case and grants review to only a small fraction of the petitions it receives each year. For a state court conviction to be heard by the U.S. Supreme Court, it must have exhausted all possible appeals within the state court systems first. In our last episode, I showed you guys the letter from a lying witness, the bullet that didn't match the gun, and the new witness account, and a brilliant new lawyer. This is the story of how that evidence was used to expose a system that had failed. This is the story of a final desperate and hopeful fight. This segment is the new legal team. Earlier, I told you about the first lawyer, the one I had my differences with. If I'm being fair, his real strength was writing. He crafted the initial appeal in a way that gave it a fighting chance to be heard, exactly as we all hoped. And look, my frustrations with how he handled things doesn't erase his talent. He might not be a fan of mine, but I'll admit, for a moment at least, I was a fan of his work. Then came the new attorney, a woman I already knew from other cases I've been investigating, cases that echo the client's situation in unsettling ways. I dug into her background and was impressed. She's built a database tracking officers across the state who've engaged in misconduct, documenting patterns, filing complaints. She even teaches criminology training the next generation of lawyers on how to spot injustice before it becomes a conviction. I've never sat in one of her classes, but from what I hear, she's shaping the future of ethical defense work. I didn't know her exact role in this case at first, but it didn't take long to see she brought exactly the kind of experience the client desperately needed. And I have to give full credit to the pastor. His persistence, his prayers, and his refusal to give up are what made this new legal team possible. He didn't just find help, he found the right help. I'd done my part. Baton had been passed, and they were moving forward, aiming first for the Pennsylvania Superior Court. From the very beginning of this investigation, both the pastor and the client told me they needed newly discovered evidence to move forward, which to me signaled they were already preparing to take this all the way to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And now, with what this new lawyer uncovered, that path makes even more sense. Because here's the breakthrough: she found a way to connect the dots between the detectives and the client's case and other investigations where those same officers were involved in questionable conduct. And that witness statement, the one recanting under coercion, that became the ammunition she needed. And it's not just about the wrongful conviction anymore. This appeal now points to something far more dangerous: a pattern of systematic corruption. I know the first lawyer received all my notes, every lead, every document, every insight I gather. Whether or how he uses them, I don't know. And frankly, I don't have the heart to go digging through court records right now. All I can do is close my eyes, pray, and trust that God hears the truth. Because this fight wasn't won in a courtroom, it was won in the streets, in the late night calls, in puzzle pieces. No one else bothered to pick it up. It took relentless, on the ground detective work to uncover what others ignore. God has a plan, and the client is about to step into whatever He's prepared. This journey wasn't straight line. It took several turns, wrongdoers, dead ends, unexpected allies to find the truth and the right people to carry it forward. So thank you, Pastor, for your unwavering faith, your valiant search, and your prayers that brought this team together. Because at the end, it takes more than evidence. It takes courage, it takes conviction, and it takes people who refuse to look away. This segment is the United States Supreme Court. The appeal made it all the way to the United States Supreme Court, the highest court in the land. This isn't just any courtroom, and this wasn't just any appeal. As the pastor reminded me, the Supreme Court doesn't take cases lightly. In fact, they don't even have to show up for most of them. Every year, they get over 7,000 petitions, and they only agree to hear about 60 to 70. That's less than 1%. For a case to be granted certiorari, legal speak for will take it. At least four of the nine justices must agree. That's the rule of four. And somehow this case made it to the cut. Why? Because it's not just about one's main conviction, it's about something bigger, a serious legal question that cuts to the heart of how justice is supposed to work in America. Maybe it's a conflict between lower courts, maybe it's a pattern of misconduct so widespread it can't be ignored. Whatever it is, the court saw enough to say we need to weigh in. Now, let me be clear: the Supreme Court isn't retrying the client. They don't hear new evidence or re interview witnesses. What they do is examine whether the law was applied correctly and whether constitutional rights were violated along the way. Once a case is accepted, both sides file detailed legal briefs. Outside groups, legal scholars, civil rights organizations, even other states can weigh in with friend of the court briefs showing how the outcome could affect people far beyond this one case. Then comes oral argument, a high stakes 30-minute showdown where lawyers stand before the justice and defend their position. While being grilled with a rapid fire question is not a speech, it's a legal do, and every word matters. After that, justice meet in total secrecy. No staff, no recorders, just nine voices in a room, debating, voting, and deciding the fate of precedent and of people like the client. A majority rules. Then comes the hard part: writing the opinion. The reasoning behind the decision becomes part of U.S. law, sometimes for decades. Concurring opinions, dissents, drafts rewritten, votes change. It's a quiet storm of legal craftsmanship happening behind closed doors. And then silence until the day the decision drops. That's where we are now. I'm sitting here in September 2025. The briefs are filed. The arguments may have been heard. The justices have met, but the world hasn't heard a word. No announcement, no ruling, just waiting. But don't mistake the silence for inaction. This pause is the calm before history is made. Because when the Supreme Court speaks, the whole country listens. And for the client, this might be the last door, the final chance. So we wait, we pray, and we trust that the truth seen by the highest court in the land cannot be unseen. This segment here is the freedom and legacy. As I sit here in September 2025, I find myself reflecting deeply on everything that's unfolded over these past months. Out of countless private investigators, a pastor chose me, not just to investigate, but to stand in the gap for truth. Whether or not my findings were ultimately used in court, that trust forged a profound connection to this case and ignited a renewed sense of purpose within me. Because at the heart of it all, the client, a man I firmly believe was wrongfully convicted, and that the staggering injustice he's endured. From the start, I pursued every lead with unwavering resolve, confident in my ability to leave no stone unturned. But I also knew when to step back, to honor the roles of attorneys, experts, and the legal process itself. That collaboration has now carried his fight to the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. And we wait. Let's be honest, wrongful convictions are rare anomalies. They are symptoms of a system that often compromised by bias, haste, and personal agendas. Yes, the US is built on laws meant to protect the innocent and hold the guilty accountable. But when those entrusted to uphold justice allow ego, prejudice, or convenience to cloud their judgment, real people pay the price. Not every official fails, but enough to erode public trust. And when that happens, accountability isn't optional, it's essential. The law must serve everyone, not just those who fit a narrative. This case is riddled with inconsistencies that defy logic. They force us to ask hard questions. Could the defense have challenged the evidence more aggressively? Could prosecutors have prioritized truth over conviction rates? And what of the jury? 12 individuals held the power to say this doesn't add up. Deliberation isn't a formality, it's a sacred duty. Jurors must choose facts over convenience, courage over comfort, and justice over speed. Our differences, race, gender, background, should never determine someone's fate in a courtroom. Diversity is our strength, not a loophole for discrimination. What some dismiss as just another case is in truth a crisis of conscience for our entire justice system. And history will reckon with those who abuse the power. Yes, the system can fail, but it can also heal through transparency, rigorous reviews, and people who refuse to look away. We haven't won yet, but the mountain of documentation we've compiled proves one thing. Even the most carefully constructed lies can crumble under the weight of truth. This journey isn't over, but if it is, proof that justice, however delayed, remains possible. And that's a legacy worth fighting for. Okay, this is the closing segment. So the client, working closely with his legal team, has now filed an appeal that's headed all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And let's be clear, the entire system failed him. The jury, the detectives, the witnesses, everyone who played a role in this miscarriage of justice shares responsibility for the devastating tragedy that unfolded the day an innocent man was convicted of a crime he did not commit. Ask yourselves this: why is JW walking free today when the very law used to convict the client, the felony murder rule, states that if a death occurs during a commission of a felony, everyone involved should face the same consequences? Why did prosecutors rely on a co defendant someone directly involved in the alleged crime, as their star witness. And why years later did the same witness recant, saying he was coerced into giving false testimony? Even more troubling, the statement I took from victim 2, who was shot that night, and his account aligns exactly with what JW later revealed. And there's the evidence, or rather, the lack of it. The weapons allegedly used by the clients were never scientifically linked to the crime, yet they were still admitted in court. The autopsy report concluded the fatal shot had to have been fired with the gun pressed directly against the victim's body. But every witness claimed the client fired after the vehicle had already started moving. That doesn't add up. The bullet didn't match. The weapon didn't match. The timeline didn't match. So, how does even ever become a case, let alone a conviction? Life teaches us through each other's pain. And if you're not seeing the truth in this case, it might be because you haven't faced injustice yourself yet. But remember, truth doesn't disappear just because you chose not to see it. From this day forward and every day after, I will keep fighting for justice. And if you or someone you know is wrongfully imprisoned, I want to hear your story. Reach out to me through the Warstone Detective Agency. You'll find me easily on Google. But be honest with me. Don't ask me to read your case only for me to discover you're not telling me the truth. Because if you're lying, I won't lift a finger. But if you're innocent, if you've been locked up for life for something you didn't do, I'm not going anywhere. Write me. I'm listening. And for what's next, I'll be waiting to see how the client's appeal unfolds. And I plan to cover it in a future episode. Though it might be a while before that drops, in the meantime, if this case moves you, please send me a prayer for the client. Pray for justice, pray for truth, and let us pursue it peacefully, leaving the ultimate judgment in God's hand. I'll also be hosting a live podcast soon to dive deeper into this case. I'm putting the final pieces together now, and we'll announce the date soon. If you have a question, insight, or feel I missed something, join me there. Comment below with your preferred day or time, and I'll do my best to accommodate you. Coming up on the podcast, I'll be releasing the same episode but in Spanish. Right after that, I'll unveil a brand new case titled Presumed Guilty, the G-Rap Files. This one hits close to home because it's my story. It's the reason I do what I do. I was targeted by the U.S. Army Criminal Investigation Division and pushed to the absolute edge, not because of evidence, not because of motive, not because of witnesses, but because in the military justice systems, an accusation often equals guilt, regardless of the facts. I'll expose how leadership, bureaucracy, and personal egos weaponized the system against soldiers like me. This wasn't an isolated incident. It happened to hundreds across the country. Some lost their careers, some lost their freedom, some lost their lives, and many are still suffering today because of a broken process that prioritizes appearances over truth. This case will show you why I'm not just a detective for the wrongfully accused. I'm the right one because I lived it. I know what it feels like to have your truth twisted to fit someone else's narrative. The truth is hidden, but someone has to go find it. So if you are a true seeker of justice, advocate, or a crime junkie who believes in second chances and real facts, subscribe because what's coming next will shake you to your core. Stay with me. The fight isn't over.